in that intoxicating era of 2016, 2017, there's a lot of money sloshing around. There's a lot of VC capital coming into a number of ag tech startups. And people are really asking questions. Come on, guys, let's go. Try this. Let's go at scale.
Coming up on The Modern Acre, we get an inside look into Indigo Ag's journey over the past 10 years with their new head of sustainable business solutions, Ewan Lamont.
The Modern Acre is the podcast for builders in agriculture who think differently. If you'd like to dig deeper with The Modern Acre, check out our membership community of builders in agriculture, the Modern Acre Co-op. The Modern Acre podcast is presented by American Ag Credit. American Ag Credit is a proud member of the Farm Credit System, which was created more than 100 years ago with the sole purpose of serving the financial needs of farmers and ranchers. From small farms to the largest agribusiness enterprises, American Ag Credit understands agriculture and how to structure customized financial solutions. Just like many of the guests we have on the pod, American Ag Credit recognizes that the evolution of agriculture is inevitable and exciting. Their goal is to be at the forefront of this evolution, partnering with producers to grow their future in ways they haven't imagined yet. To learn more about American Ag Credit and to receive exclusive access to reports from Terrain, a research and insight service of American Ag Credit, visit agloan.com/terrain or check the link in our show notes. All right, Tim. So we got to dig in. I think this founder mode thing requires a follow-up. We talked about it on the Co-op 10. We shared that with the public feed. Your pick of the week, which was everyone's pick, I guess, was Founder Mode, this essay by Paul Graham. We'll link it in the show notes again about just founder mode versus manager mode, and kind of his takeaway that founder mode isn't talked about in business school, but it is the scrappy type of leader that is really bringing intensity to the business and involved in all of the day-to-day decisions, having skip level meetings, etc. So anyway, this is blown up on online. I'm not on Twitter. You're on Twitter. This is how you found this. And the All In podcast, a podcast that we really enjoy, they talked about it. So everyone's talking about founder mode, Tim, and you were onto it early. Kudos. And I thought it was kind of funny. These guys, sometimes they're a little out of touch, right? Like they are not common folk. These guys are like basically most of them billionaires. But shout out David Freeberg is our favorite. They talked about this essay and they just had all these issues with it. Like, this is already a thing. Founder mode has already been in existence. This is just like a flashy name for it. It almost seems like they were jealous that they didn't come up with the idea and they had to just like explain why, oh, this has been around and we can't put like this branding on it. And my takeaway was like, you guys are taking this way too seriously. Like, this is just a fun way to think about leadership and Silicon Valley and startups. And it should be a net positive, a net fun. But these guys were just, I think just took it too seriously.
Yeah, it was a little hilarious. I think there was probably a little bit of jealousy that Paul Graham came out and got all this positive press with it and Y Combinator, and they all have their VC investments. And so they probably were a little bit miffed that they didn't get to it first and put a brand on, basically just hustle. Over the past week, it's been manager mode, founder mode, hustle culture, beast mode. Like, what I really care about, Ty, is farmer mode. The people that listen to this podcast that are doing stuff, working with farms, either working on farm directly or supporting a farm, really getting after it every day, Ty. What do you think about that, farmer mode?
You just blew my mind, Tim. Farmer mode. That is the ag builder mentality. Farmer mode. Okay, I like where your head's at. Forget founder mode. Enter farmer mode.
Oh yeah.
All right, Tim. This was such a great conversation. It really exceeded my expectations, Tim. We had Ewan on the podcast from Indigo. We've never had anyone from Indigo on the podcast before, and they've been through a crazy journey over the past 10 years. One of the most prolific, prominent ag tech startups ever in terms of valuation, publicity, etc., and just, I think, ambition. And last year, big news, obviously, there's down rounds happening. There was a really notable down round from Indigo. And a lot of people we're just fanning the flame, right? Like, oh, there goes Indigo. And today we talk with Ewan about behind the scenes. What happened and where are they going? And I thought it was just so enlightening, Tim. This is why podcasts are so important, because you can have this long form conversation, sit down, hear directly from a person who's been there for the past 7 years about the ups and downs and how they came to where they're at now. And I thought it was incredibly enlightening. It got me a lot more excited about what Indigo is up to. So I think our listeners are going to love this one.
Let's drop you in with what's top of mind for you. And
we've got a couple of weeks to New York Climate Week, which for many of us in sustainability is sort of one of those like main events throughout the year where folks from around the world are kind of come together. It's around the same time as the UN General Assembly. So Manhattan is disaster. You can't move at all. And of course, that's the time that everyone descends upon New York to distribute events throughout the city. So total disaster, but my goodness, it's awesome to sort of be there and see all these people from, all over the world who are doing really extraordinary stuff in climate, in agriculture, which is sort of the side of the climate debate that we get heavily involved in. Everyone's just got some really interesting conversations. You're sitting on street corners and you're just hearing people talking about carbon accounting and all these sort of random discussions around. So it's a great place to be at the end of September. It's a great place to be anyway, the end of September in New York. It's wonderful. The city is just coming to life. Right, a bit of that heat's come out of the air, so it's great. So we're certainly looking forward to that. We've got plenty going on. We've got a few things in the hopper that we hope we'll be able to announce in advance of that. But obviously, that COP28 coming later on in the year in Azerbaijan is sort of one of those other sort of main sustainability events that we've got in the calendar. So that's certainly keeping us busy. To make sure that we're able to sort of keep on the front foot as far as the agricultural calendar is concerned, right? We're looking forward to seeing the next round of how our of how our products and how our programs have fared. So it's an exciting time, and getting to the end of the summer is always a great opportunity to sort of get back out to the fields and see how you've done.
The one swing a year nature of agriculture.
Well, I mean, you guys growing your fruits and veggies, at least you're able to produce one or two things, right? But yeah, it doesn't help, right? We do at least have exposure down in South America, in India as well. So we're not just tied to corn and beans in the Midwest. But yeah, no, it's the reality, right? The folks that are sort of taking on so much risk, and I think this is part of the issue around sustainability, is that a lot of folks really underestimate the risk that farming enterprises are taking on, particularly when corn's under $4 a bushel, to ask folks to radically change how they think about the farming operations and start doing new things. It's just like, guys, it's going to be really challenging to make money this season. Don't come to me with new ideas on how I should be doing things. It's always very challenging. Someone from the coasts, or someone coming in with a British accent telling folks how to change their farming operations. So the irony of this is not lost on me. But yeah, no, having the opportunity to get a couple of seasons in one calendar year is absolutely transformational. So we've been really fortunate in investing pretty heavily in Brazil early on, and Argentina, and we've got a joint venture over in India, which is a very different flavor. But ultimately, these sustainable technologies and programs, they're geography agnostic, right? There's no reason why we can't be thinking about agriculture as a climate solution, whether it's smallholder farming or whether it's some of the really sophisticated farmers out in the Midwest or down in the Pampas.
Totally. Well, we are excited to dig in to all things Indigo. You've been there a while. There's been ups and downs and all the way around, just like so many startups. So excited to dig into that. But how'd you end up at Indigo? What's your background? Tell us a little bit more about your story.
So I'd spent many years at one of the ag majors, right? I worked for Syngenta for many years, so I had a decent background in ag chem and seeds and breeding and sort of some of those, the range of technologies that go on the farm. I'd spent quite a bit of time, overseas. I left the UK over 20 years ago now. Spent a bit of time in Europe. I spent about 15 years over in Asia. And that really gave the opportunity to sort of get stuck into a very different kind of agriculture. And having spent that time in Syngenta, I was then working for a local company in Burma, which was really an opportunity to say, well, look, Burma was the rice basket of the British Empire for many years, right? It's phenomenal opportunity to grow pretty much anything you like. But for the last 60 years, because of the military dictatorship, it kind of been off the map. Right. So this was sort of 7 or 8 years ago coming in then, where there was an opportunity to really rethink about how Burma should be engaging with the global economy. And a big part of that was going to be agriculture. So the chance that you have to kind of come in with one of the largest local ag companies, seed, fertilizer, chem, etc., and actually the exam question being, if you were to redesign agriculture for a country that has, phenomenal opportunity to grow so many different crops and fantastic variety and great quality crops, how would you do it? Right. And a lot of this at the time was thinking, okay, well, we haven't really, the team hadn't really stayed up to date on sales and marketing. Like, how does the real world do this? Right. What are the tips and techniques that everyone's been using in some of these developing markets for so long? That just didn't exist. Right. So super interesting challenge there, but sort of had this come to Jesus moment when, having a conversation with our chairman, who was saying, looking across at Thailand and saying these guys are using 4 to 5 times as much urea, right? That's the goal. And then over in Vietnam, they're using 10 times as much chemistry as we are here in Burma. And you just have this moment, you're like, my goodness, if there was an opportunity to basically take a blank sheet of paper for a beautiful country which has the production potential that Burma had, and the answer had to be, let's just sell as much fertilizer and chemistry as we possibly can, there's something wrong with that. And just had that moment thinking, there's got to be a better way to do this, right? If you were going to redesign an agricultural system, you probably wouldn't go about it the way that so many countries have done, just as a result of how R&D's developed, green revolution, etc. So really looking at that and thinking that just feels not quite right. And it was around that time that biologicals were starting to come on the scene. An old colleague of mine gave me a call and said, hey, are you bored? What's going on? I said, living in Burma, one thing I am not is bored. But she started talking about biologicals, and for me, it was working for one of the major chem companies. It's always like, come on, guys, this stuff isn't real, right? It was always making this choice between whether you wanted a green product or whether you wanted like something that actually worked. Right, and you say to a grower, what do you want? Would you want to solve your problem, or do you want to feel as if you're saving the world? Well, what we were starting to see was actually that dichotomy was really starting to narrow, and you say, well, actually, we don't have to choose anymore whether we want something to work or whether it's actually much more beneficial for the soil, much more beneficial for the planet. So really, just as I was having this come to Jesus moment there in Burma, and someone really out of the blue had said, hey, we're working on these biologicals. This could be pretty interesting. We feel we're at the stage where we can commercialize these. How about it? It all fell into place. So I certainly never had a master plan to come to the US to spend my time. I live in the Boston area. That was never part of the plan. I was quite enjoying my life. My 15 years in Asia was loving life. But here I am, 7.5 years later, and all that time has been at Indigo. And it's as you mentioned, it's been a pretty extraordinary ride, and I think captures much of the zeitgeist of startups and ag tech in particular. And delighted to say that we sort of emerged from the other side of that excitement to really get on the front foot with some of the things we're up to.
What a cool story. Burma to Boston. I haven't heard that relocation happen before. That's a pretty wild move. Well, Ewan, maybe talk to us about kind of the state of affairs at Indigo. Like the company's been super notable, like probably one of the most familiar ag tech companies in the world. There's been a number of changes within the company. It was once described as 8 startups in one, doing a lot of different things with logistics and trading. And you've definitely made a push this year to kind of simplify the business model. Maybe talk to us about kind of the current structure.
Yes, it's a good question. I mean, you turn the clock back to 2016, 2017. The company's founded in 2013, right? So started with the hypothesis that if you're using the tips and the tricks and techniques that we know from the human microbiome, does this remain valid for the plant microbiome? Turns out, yeah, fantastic. At that time, 10 years ago, that was not obvious, right? But actually going in and having the opportunity to look at the microbiology that is on and around plants and understand what the relationships are between resiliency and ultimately how do you leverage microbiology to ask plants to do different things. I mean, it's amazing. It's absolute science fiction stuff. It's so intoxicating when you speak to some of these microbiologists and say, oh yeah, look at this. This is what it does. And here's the data. You're like, my goodness, this is so exciting, right? And so, from the legacy as a biologicals company, it was really founded with the view that, look, we can't continue to feed the world. We can't continue to do agriculture the way we've been doing it. Like there's just not enough planets to allow us to do this. So the question was always, okay, well, if biologicals is something that's really going to become mainstream, how do you actually enable farmers to get paid for that? That was always a question, right? Farmers are like, well, look, I'm happy to use it, but look, I'm changing things. Like I don't get paid for saving the world here, right? So how does this work? And so, as a young startup, we tried many things, right? And some of the things that were, pure enthusiasm, we're like, well, we can do this and we can build this and let's get behind it. But in that intoxicating era of 2016, 2017, there's a lot of money sloshing around. There's a lot of VC capital coming into a number of ag tech startups, and people are really asking questions. Come on, guys, let's go try this. Let's go at scale. Having the temerity to try some of these new business models is pretty extraordinary. And having the opportunity to actually realize that one or two of them might actually work. It's a classic VC model, right? If you try enough of these business models, eventually something's going to stick. Now, that is not necessarily a method that I'd recommend for building a company. Also, it's a very expensive way of figuring out what works. And if you take half a beat and actually ask yourself some pretty simple questions around product market fit, you could have saved a lot of heartache, right? And a couple of dollars along the way. But look, in some of the conversations I have around this, a lot of folks are really eager to sort of press on the bruise and almost ask for an apology for Indigo. Why did you do this? Why did you move into the grain trading space? Why did you move into all of these different things? Like there's no need to apologize for this stuff. Like at the end of the day, if you can be audacious and have a swing at some of the things which we did, and you pull off one or two of them, my goodness, that's an extraordinary achievement, right? And I think certainly what Indigo has achieved in terms of bringing market mechanisms to sustainability, getting farmers paid for making practice changes that are beneficial to their soil, to their overall enterprise profitability, as well as the planet. What's not to like? For many years, everyone's looking at agriculture and saying, you guys are the problem. That's not acceptable. Well, guess what? No one was coming out with the actual tools by which farmers would be able to be paid for the efforts that they're making in terms of sustainability. And you have, fantastic farmers who are really doing the right thing, have been doing the right thing for generations, but no one's really allowing them to monetize what they've been done. So, for Indigo to come out with an audacious idea that farmers can get paid for sequestering carbon, taking this invisible gas from the sky, putting it into the soil, and then someone's going to pay you for it. I mean, 5 years ago, we were getting laughed out of the building for bringing this up, right? And everyone would say, "Oh, Indigo, what is this now? You're tackling climate change with agriculture? Get out of here! It's the most it's the most recent bad idea that you've had." But now I tell you what, you go pretty much anywhere in the world, including Burma, everyone's got an opinion on carbon programs, rightly or wrongly, right? And that is something that we succeeded in doing, right? We took this from very much the sort of domain of PhDs and NGOs and saying, actually, guys, there's an opportunity here to bring this into the mainstream. So, yeah, Indigo tried a whole bunch of stuff. And look, as a young startup, you try many things and they don't all work. But, when you find something that does work and you see the opportunity to really scale in a profitable way, and you're able to iron out some of those initial problems you have around some of the science, some of the technology, some of the adoption, all of these sorts of things, and you can get it to work, that's pretty exciting, right? So, it's really funny. We still go into market. We still have farmers who say, oh, look, you guys came to me 5-6 years ago and you sold me something and didn't work well. Okay, it's really painful to be sort of held to account for something that happened 6-7 years ago, right? Now, if anyone in business knows that tempers are short and memories are long, right? That is the reality, and no more is that true than dealing with farmers. But look, it's funny when you sort of try and balance that sort of Silicon Valley enthusiasm and let's just break things and it's all about growth with an industry like agriculture, where everyone's going to look at you as if you've got two heads with that sort of approach. And look, we didn't get it right in many ways the first time. We were super excited to be getting these things done. It was very much the era of move fast and break things. And guess what? That doesn't work when you're dealing with just one season a year for all of these growers. So look, we probably made every mistake. We probably learned the hard way on everything. But the fact we're still here, the fact we're continuing to deliver, and the fact we're really starting to get some momentum around the stuff now is something that really gets me pretty fired up.
That was awesome. Thank you for that. Really, I think that people are looking for opportunities to just rubbing the bruise, right? Like you mentioned, like that's the era of social media, and you see something like a massive down round, and it's like, oh man. But for someone who's been at a startup, who's seen the ups and downs, right? Like everyone in these companies, it's not like they're like flippantly doing their job, right? Everyone in these companies is trying to create value. And I think this is just a function of a zero interest rate environment. When the funding was frothy, like you are kind of in this position to have to do a lot. And like, investors would say like, you should, I could picture some of those conversations. Like you've got to own agriculture. You got to own sustainable agriculture. Indigo does, right? Like, and it's like, okay, well, if that's the vision, like we have to be playing, like agriculture is so big.
It's got to be everywhere, right?
It's a slippery slope, right? Of you got to be involved in each of these different areas instead of really focusing on, hey, what do we do best? What is profitable? What has a path to profitability? So I think it's enlightening, right, for people to hear and not judge.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, I mean, where I'm from, we talk about tall poppy syndrome, right? So do you know what I mean by that? So it's sort of, someone who's sort of, so you're in a field, right? One of the poppies sort of goes much higher than the others, right? You just want to slash that thing down, right? So we were very much a product of that sort of mentality, which is, who are these guys? They've come into the market with a lot of noise, a lot of splash, and I mean, really, that they don't have a lot of gatekeeping. We saw a lot of that, right? Folks saying that that's not how it works in agriculture. No, you need to go and do this. Like that. That's not how you make progress. From showing up and doing the same things that everyone has done for years before. Like, it may be painful and it doesn't all work, but if you can get it to work, my goodness, the opportunity to actually do something new and novel is hugely value creation, right? Not just for Indigo, but also for growers, for the other participants in the ecosystem. But I will say, look, trying to have a swing at this and change this massive industry in isolation is not a smart thing to do. It's too big. You're dealing with a physical product which needs to be, produced, shipped, processed, marketed in, hundreds of miles away. I mean, you can't do that by yourself, right? So yeah, certainly a few years ago, we sort of realized, oh my goodness, like it's too much. It's too much of an elephant to consume all at once, which is why we're just like, hey, look, we're open for business with partners, and that was absolutely transformational to sort of how we then went to market, how we're able to really accelerate some of the technology, how we're able to accelerate a lot of our science. So we look back on those days, you're like, guys, it was so simple. Like, why didn't we think about that? But you're a product of your era, and everyone's throwing money at you. Say, just go and do it. You can do it. What could possibly go wrong? Well, turns out when the money dries up, and everyone's saying, no, it's about a path to profitability, and you see many companies having this, oh my goodness moment. Then and not everyone made it out of that transformation, right? Or people very much got stuck in their tracks. But it did give us the opportunity to say, okay, look, what are we actually really good at, right? I know many people can sort of step into some areas, and we were certainly enthusiastic with the amount of stepping we were doing, but we very quickly realized that we were really good at the discovery and commercialization of biologicals, right? That was the legacy of the company. And we were finding these super cool, unique endophytic microbes, right? That no one else had discovered or certainly brought to market. And also the science and the approach we'd taken around sustainability, particularly the carbon program, and then subsequently the Scope 3 sustainable crop program. This was something that was, we were already leaders in the market because there just weren't other people doing this 6 or 7 years ago, right? So we're like, all right, this is where we're going to place our bets. So Indigo is a company which has two business units right now. One is the biologicals and one is on sustainability, right? And guess what? They talk to each other, because one big component of sustainability is actually using biological products to grow the crop in a slightly different way. So we're pretty excited about not just the standalone businesses, but also the way in which they can influence each other. So it's a much simpler story now to say, Indigo, who are you guys? Don't you do something with the marketplace? No, those days are gone, right? Those days are gone. This whole 5 startups in one, look, that was very much of an era. Now it's like, let's focus, let's do what we do well. And we found that, and what's been great to see is actually we've still got a lot of the same folk who really invested in the success of the company 10 years ago, still on board. A lot of our key scientists, a lot of our key members of staff are still there. I mean, I've been there for 7.5 years, and I'm certainly not the person with the most tenure. These are people who are like deeply committed to sustainability in agriculture, and I don't say that in a kind of corporate advertisement way at all. These are folks who are expert soil scientists. These are ecologists. These are people who are leveraging data science. These are people who could be software engineers in the valley who are actually having a real swing at agriculture and sustainability there. And there's something to be said for that. The fact that you can hang on to these great people, attract this talent to really take on some of the biggest challenges out there. It's pretty extraordinary.
Ewan, let's dive into sustainability solutions and biological products. Let's break this down a little bit. I think the biological products is maybe a little bit more straightforward. Of you guys are developing biological products to serve the farmer community, promote sustainability. Talk to us about the sustainability solution side of the house. What does that side of the house do? And how do they fit together, like you alluded to?
Yeah. So effectively, we are bringing sustainability to farmers and the ecosystem as a new stream of revenue, right? So the way we see it in which is, farmers are getting paid for the crop that they grow, and just given the service they are providing to humanity in decarbonization, why shouldn't they get paid for the carbon that is sequestered into the ground or for the emissions that are abated in changing the way that they grow that crop? So ultimately, you're going to be in a situation where farmers get paid for the physical crop as well as for a carbon crop, or we'd make it a digital crop, right? So it's not a crop that you need to, haul to an elevator or, do anything other than sort of enter in that data. A process which is going from something nightmarish to something which is just a lot more easier these days, right? So if we can get sustainability as a new revenue stream on every farm, that is a great win, right? And why can't we do it, right? People are willing to pay for emissions reductions, abatement, and carbon removals, right? It's already there. We already proved that in the market, and whether that's as a carbon credit or whether that's in sourcing what they call a sustainable crop, right? So the food company, for example, can claim those carbon reductions as part of their Scope 3 and book that against their corporate climate commitments. So it's kind of as simple as that. How are we able to enable farmers to get paid for doing the right thing? Right? It's funny, right? You'll go and speak to many farmers, and they're like, "Look, I understand this whole save the planet thing, but how do I actually get paid?" Yeah, great, okay. Well, who says you can't do both, right? And that is exactly what we are doing. And so, how I best explain it is saying to the growers, "Look, you're making the practice changes, right? You're planting the cover crops, you're implementing no-till agriculture, and how do you want to monetize that?" Right? Do you want to monetize that as a carbon credit? So Microsoft will come in and buy that carbon credit. Thanks very much. Or do you want to sell your crop to Nestle, to Walmart, to Anheuser-Busch? Right? All three great customers that we've had for a number of years now. Alternatively, you see the fuels environment heating up, as it were. And with 45Z tax credits coming in as well, there's an alternative way in which growers are able to monetize these sustainable practices. So it's getting pretty exciting. So there's like multiple ways in which growers are going to be able to monetize the practice changes that they've made. And sort of where we see the key is that, folks, look, it's the grower's decision how they want to do it, right? So we often we're often in conversations where large companies are saying to growers, "Oh, look, you need to be selling to me. I need you to sell me sustainable crops." And the grower's looking at them and saying, "Well, that's all very interesting, but how are you going to make it worth my while? Who's going to actually pay me for the risk that I'm taking on here? Who's going to pay me for the cover crop seeds that I'm going to have to plant?" And these companies kind of look at each other and say, "But look, it's the right thing to do, right? We need you to save the planet." And the grower just laughs them out of the room. Just like, come on, guys, that's not realistic. I was speaking to the Illinois Farm Bureau a couple of weeks ago in where we were in Bloomington, in Illinois, and they're saying they have these conversations all the time. That food companies come to them and said, "We need you guys to be pushing sustainable agriculture because we want to buy sustainable crops to offset our Scope 3 footprint." Okay, great, fantastic. So what are you going to do about it? And everyone kind of looks at each other and has a very awkward conversation. So, well, I don't know. I don't have money to pay for this, but it's the right thing to do. Well, look, if it's the right thing to do, you better put your money where your mouth is. This is this whole thing. This idea of transition to net zero. It's going to cost money, right? We don't just get to do all of these things for free. It's going to cost money. Now, the question is, how do we make it a business case so there's a market mechanism behind it? We know that there are companies who are willing to put their hand in their pocket and pay 60, 70, $80 for a carbon credit coming from our program right now. And that is a price appreciation that we're seeing double-digit percentage increase every year, right? So the demand for what they call these environmental assets is really spiking, right? And certainly as you look at the voluntary carbon market and you see some of the jolts that's had, particularly over the last few years, we start to see some of the winners emerging from this market, and certainly we see soil and ag carbon credits as being among the sort of really attractive environmental attributes that companies want to be able to claim, right? So for just bringing it back to Indigo, so that's our vision. We want to be able to monetize sustainability for the farmer, but it's not just about emissions. It's not just about carbon. Sometimes it's very challenging to engage people and talking about carbon. It just becomes very esoteric and kind of like, I don't get it. Like a combination of soil and emissions and nitrogen. People are, honestly, I don't know what to say about these things, right? But you start changing the conversation to talking about water, talking about biodiversity, nature. Everyone loves talking about ducks or dragonflies, right? Fantastic. Everyone loves talking about the amount of water we've saved. We've saved 7 billion gallons of water in the rice programs that we've been conducting down in Arkansas. That's pretty extraordinary, and that is a way in which you're able to then communicate with customers at a completely different level. Now, everyone loves the water story, but the emission story, like I hear it all the time. I don't know. I don't really understand it. So we are more than carbon. Everything we need to be thinking beyond carbon. If we are not thinking about nature as the ultimate solution to our carbon crisis, we're missing the most immediate, scalable, and affordable solution that we have.
Super good point. Having previously worked for a company focused in a sustainable business model, like that was one of the challenges, that everyone wants sustainability, but no one wants to pay for it. So by you focusing on kind of creating the right mechanism to create some payments there is really exciting. Ewan, talk to us about kind of the diversification you have within your grower base. You're working in North America, South America. You mentioned India. These are really different personas of growers, like big growers, small growers, different crop types. These models, I'm sure, are quite a bit different based on the crops you're in, the region you're in. So maybe talk to us about the approach of kind of getting the right program for the right farmer in the right region.
Yeah, you bet. So we're in 14 different countries right now, and that ranges from the US, and we're starting a number of initiatives in Canada right now, down through Argentina, Brazil, a number of countries in Europe, particularly Central Eastern Europe, and then over in India. Yeah, different agricultural systems for sure. But, to be honest, it never fails to amaze me that you can have a conversation with a millet grower in India, right? Or a massive farmer down in Brazil who's got these just enormous fields of soybeans. Everyone's actually thinking about the same thing. Everyone's obsessed with weather. Everyone's obsessed with price. Everyone's obsessed with risk. And actually, when we think about it, there's far more similarities than there are differences, right? I'm being a little flippant, but ultimately, everyone's thinking about profitability as the main driver here. So a number of the conversations that we will have in India around our carbon program there, where we just enrolled our 1 million acre there, which in India is wild, right? If you think the average farm size is about 2 acres, let's say, to actually get 1 million acres enrolled, that's a lot of farmers, right? But it's the same conversations that resonate. We can get you paid for something that you're already doing, or that you can actually adapt within your farming operation, so that you get to sell your physical crop and you get to get a new revenue stream. What's not to like? So in many ways, talking about the fundamentals of this, what's going to drive my P&L is sustainability, a line item I can not just have on my P&L, but actually start budgeting against it. Yeah, we believe we're at a tipping point in which that is starting to become a reality, right? We're starting to get a lot more clarity around pricing of carbon credits, yields of carbon per acre that growers can reasonably expect. So, growers are now starting to look at this and be like, oh my goodness, actually in an era where crop prices are really depressed, actually, I can probably look a lot better if I'm able to participate in some of these programs as well. But look, obviously, the conversations you have with a mega farm down in Argentina versus a smallholder farm are very different. But everyone's facing similar issues, right? Everyone's facing changes in climate. Everyone's asking questions about resilience. Everyone's seeing some of the issues around runoff. Everyone's seeing some of the issues around overuse of certain persistent chemistry, etc. So actually coming up with these new solutions and actually looking at this new wave of agricultural technology, farmers around the world are pretty excited about this, right? If we're able to come out and bring like a bionematicide that we've launched recently in Brazil, I mean, to see improved efficacy versus a chemistry, that's where we want to be, right? Like there's not a farmer on the planet who say, oh, actually, I'd rather use chemistry than using a natural solution if I know it's going to work. No, like this is what we've been waiting for all along, and now we don't have to choose between a green solution or efficacy. Like the future is here already, right? So that's pretty exciting, and I think we'll start to see biologicals becoming a lot more on the mainstream. Certainly, look at the adoption in Brazil, in Argentina, compared with where we are in the US. In many ways, here in the US, we're laggards on adopting some of this technology. So there's a great opportunity to be able to adopt that more. And then just thinking about the main drivers of sustainability. This is geography agnostic, right? Everyone's thinking about resilience. Everyone's thinking about building in a natural hedge to their farming operation, and the fact that you can come up and the main byproduct of that is saving the planet. I'd say that's a pretty decent deal.
Love that. And yeah, I mean, I feel the same way about biologicals. Seems like there's just a huge opportunity. And I think it's one thing within ag tech / regenerative agriculture. I think it's one thing that so many people align on, right? Is like, if we can use products that improve the health of the soil while not using chemicals that can potentially be more efficacious, right? Like that is just a win-win for everyone throughout the supply chain. So definitely something that Tim and I are really excited about. I think there's been a lot of momentum around biologicals in recent years for that reason. Ewan, want to kind of wrap this up here. What's your food or ag hot take?
I'd say the best friend to growers right now is tech. And what I mean, big tech coming into the farm belt and paying for sustainability, right? We're already seeing it, right? We saw Microsoft come in and bought 40,000 credits from us a few months ago. Pretty interesting price. Would love to have them back for the new harvest that's coming in, and that of course has put the cat amongst the pigeons in many ways. The other tech companies coming in and saying, "Oh, you guys got any more credits? How do we get some of these credits?" It seems like a really good idea since we've just built this enormous data center in Ohio, which is churning through all this water and pumping out all of these emissions. We should probably figure out a way locally that we can start offsetting these emissions or figuring out new business models that we can start bringing down our footprint here. But that's got to be good news, right? What I think is going to be really interesting, of course, is there's going to be a rush for the farmers who've made these changes and who have sort of created this sustainable acre, right? Let's say they planted cover crops. Let's say they brought the carbon intensity of their produce down 40, 50%. Who's going to pay for that? Well, guess what? There's now multiple people who are going to pay for that. It's no longer a case of just going to the elevator and just getting the commodity price for it. Right? When you've got Microsoft who's saying, "Oh yeah, we'll totally take that carbon credit. Thanks very much," and you've got a food company who might be offering a premium because they want to be able to source low carbon corn. Great, thanks very much. Suddenly, everyone's scrapping over the same acre. Right, so it's no longer a food company who just gets to take it. Just you guys just load me up, haul your corn, and let's get going. Well, guess what? With the tech giants coming in who are cash rich right now, they have the opportunity to come in and strip out a huge amount of environmental assets without the rest of the food chain realizing what just hit them. Now, this is potentially very challenging for food companies who have already made these large commitments to be taking down big chunks of their Scope 3 emissions and saying, well, wait a minute, how is that fair that someone outside the agri-food chain is coming in and taking a carbon credit where I should have that? That's my right. I've been dealing with these farmers for years. Well, hang on, wait a minute. This food company is not your friend. There's a business transaction that's taking place here. And if Microsoft is going to come in and pay this money for the carbon credit, well, guess what? You're going to have to match that. Or you're going to at least have to recognize that there is a crop rotation here. So let's say if Nestle wants to source regenerative corn, but the farmer's switching to soybean next year, okay, well, who's buying the soybean? Well, maybe that's when Microsoft steps in and says, well, look, there's not a market right now I can see for sustainable soybean, but you're still able to keep that grower motivated to maintain the sustainability changes they've made to the operation because they know that they're going to be able to monetize it. If it's not by selling to Nestle, because I don't have the program, whatever it is, they know they're going to be able to get paid for it by Microsoft or by DoorDash or whoever it is who's coming in trying to get that environmental attribute. That is great news for growers. That is a big concern for a lot of companies with agri-food chains who are now starting to sort of realize this freight train that's coming at them, which is there's going to be more competition than you can imagine for these sustainable acres. Now, what does that mean? Well, everyone has the opportunity to get together and really drive volume up, right? At the moment, cover cropping around the country hasn't even overtaken 10%, right? We're just at the beginning of this journey. So what if tech and food companies and feed companies and fuel companies all got together like, okay, guys, we're going to have to really incentivize that growers start making some of the changes here so that you're able to make progress against your scope 3. We're able to get these tax credits from 45Z, and Microsoft's also able to offset its footprint of its new data center. Like, there's plenty of acres out there, right? There's a whole lot of corn and soybean and wheat that gets grown throughout the Midwest. So why can we not like collectively incentivize farmers to make the changes that we need them to make, not just for the benefit of the planet, but also for the benefit of their P&L, right? Again, we don't have to do this by ourselves. Microsoft doesn't have to do it by ourselves, but realizing we're all part of an ecosystem and collectively we can change some of the way in which farming is done so that it generates new revenue for the ecosystem, I think would be a game changer.
Super exciting stuff. This has been an awesome conversation, Ewan. As we wrap up, how can our listeners get in touch and connect with you and Indigo?
Well, look, website's always there, indigoag.com. I'm always open to lively debate in the DMs on LinkedIn, however it may be. Look, reach out. We're always excited to hear from people who are mission aligned, or some of the most lively conversations I have are people who take a very different view of things. And look, so long as you got some data and some interesting facts to back up your opinions, we're here for a debate every day. So let's go.
So, Tim, what'd you think?
Like you said at the top, we've known about Indigo forever. They're one of the most well-known ag tech companies in the space. And so it's really cool to kind of hear the story of like what it's like to be in a high-profile startup and really testing and trying new things. And like that comes with a lot of people trying to throw shade on like, oh, that's never going to work. But like they had rolled up their sleeves and tried to figure it out. And some stuff worked and some stuff didn't. And so kind of the renewed focus this year on focusing just on their biologicals business and their sustainability business going forward, and really finding that path to profitability to figure out we tried a bunch of stuff. This is what's working. And now we're going to double down on that and create value for our investors and our employees. So that was really cool to see.
Hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast anywhere you listen to your podcast. You can sign up for the Modern Acre Co-op, our membership community. You can subscribe to our newsletter. So we're going to link all that in the show notes so you can better connect with the Modern Acre. We greatly appreciate you listening, and we will be back next week with another great episode.